Hello, everybody. Here we are at Lynn Talks Tech. I'm Fernando Labastida, and we're here with Linh Nguyen, CEO, co-founder of IT-Conductor. And we have a very special episode, the beginning of a series of special episodes about Lynn's personal journey, where he got to today. And we're going to start off with kind of a fascinating story, a little bit of a harrowing experience that you went, during the Vietnam War. You kind of lived it as a little boy. So, if you could walk us through those sort of beginning years of your life and what was going on over there, with you and your family in Viet before you left.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll take a little bit of a background or looking back. Sometimes I think about sharing my life story, but not as a eulogy after I'm gone and nobody knew about it. So it's good to reflect what I call character building history about what happened and how I got to be in here and what that has transformed or challenges I overcome. So yeah, I know in business we don't normally talk about our personal life but I think this is important in the fact that it does build into a lot of who I am today and the history and how I got here, right? Because it's actually, and I was not born, in a Western country. I was born in Vietnam, in Saigon, and before the war or during the war. In fact, right in the middle of the war, I could hear, remember nights where there were air raids or just bombs going off. You can hear them, you can see flashes because I live in the heart of Saigon, so we're somewhat a little away from the battlefields, but it's there because everybody in my neighborhood, I live by, I would say we were kind of middle class in Vietnam. We live right at the market front. So there would be a market and our street and my house were right at the market. So it's considered to be a pretty good location. And in Vietnam, we had a double story home, which is considered to be, somewhat wealthy.
Yeah.
You have a brick home. Back in the old days, a lot of people live in shacks and mud homes or whatever. But in Vietnam, you have a market front home. And I didn't realize at the time, but later on, my father was in the South Vietnamese army, and he was a uniform, infantry. And the early years during the war, I was going
Wow.
to school, and I was actually a Jeep, a U.S. Jeep would come and pick me up and take me to school. I didn't realize, I thought that was kind of normal, but it was kind of cool to think about
Right.
back that, like, hey, all these neighborhood guys were walking, riding their bikes, and I got a Jeep ride to a Catholic school
From the
ways
U.S.
away.
military, huh? Jeez.
So I didn't know that, but later on it actually dawned on me that I realized. I asked my father, I'm like, hey, how come I got the ride in the nice Jeep? But he was in the army, and later days, in the early days, it was like that. Later on, he was not uniform, so he would wear regular civilian clothes, and because of that luck.
Was he like a Secret Service or something?
Yeah, so he turns out that and I can attribute my English learning days from him because he was the one that taught me English, and he was a interpreter in the army because that was his ticket out of frontline. I think he only was front infantry for like a year. And they realized he was a trained interpreter, English and French. So he could speak fluent French, English. And so that's his ticket out of the front line, thank God, because a lot of my neighbors didn't ever made it back from the war. Some people you see one day, next day you don't see them. So anyways, that's how I realized, hey, I remember riding a Jeep to school and getting picked up and stuff like that. And most people just go to their neighborhood school, close by. I got taken over to some private Catholic school.
Yeah.
And later on, I realized, he had the military police people come pick me up and, take me to school. But luckily, he became non-uniform. So when the Viet Cong came in 1975, a lot of people were sent to education camp. They call them education camp, but it's really torture camp where they
My
brainwash you.
gosh.
And you do hard labor. You're the enemy. You get punished. You get hard labor for 12 hours a day. Then you get brainwashed at night with all the, communism stuff. So my father didn't have to go through that. He would have if they knew who he was. But since it was
Oh my
non-uniform, later
gosh.
years,
Okay.
he actually avoided that. So that was a stroke of luck somewhat. But then after that, it became extremely hard in 1975. I remember growing up having a comfortable life to very difficult, because if you don't know, the communist Vietnamese, they take over your possession. Whatever they want, they take. When they come in, you're not allowed to have possessions. Let's say you have money, they exchange the money
Hmm.
to the new Vietnamese dollar, and they say each family can only, change whatever old currency to new currency. Let's say, they say, okay, you allow $5,000. Let's say you are middle class, you have, some money. What happened to that money? You cannot exchange for this much. So it's a way to get rid of wealth by taking over your possession. So a lot of people invest in, they buy gold. Gold is the trusted old, asset. So people started exchange
Yeah.
money for gold bars, and it's not uncommon that, you'll be sleeping on a pillow and under there is a hidden gold, because that was the only way to
Oh
retain
my
what you have.
gosh.
So my family had exchanged money into gold because we couldn't, you can't put it in a bank. There's no such thing anymore. They take over the whole financial system. They take everything over. And I remember keep having to change currency every few months. They change it so that they keep like basically taking your possessions away. But then I start noticing that people start escaping from Vietnam. Now, remember
Right.
1975, when the fall of Saigon, whatever you see on TV, if you remember, or if you look at the old documentary, people were
I
rushing to
remember.
the embassy. There were mass evacuation, one of the biggest kind of human, kind of exodus. If you remember the biblical coming out of Egypt, but think about that, right? So Vietnamese dense population in Saigon, everybody's scrambling to get out, because everybody that was any times associated with South Vietnam in terms of military, remember, was drafting, right? So almost everybody was in like the military at some point. So you get thrown into education camp. One of my neighbor, I remember, he was immediately taken away to education camp. He came back a couple of years later, a complete vegetable. I mean, he was lucky
Complete
one to come
vegetable.
back.
Oh my gosh.
He came back and it was just like completely, you're talking to a blank wall. His eyes were not, there was no soul left in there. It was completely, they torture him until he's so like, so life there was, you get brainwashed every day. Schooling is all about rewriting history, whatever. And so we needed to get out. And my father, as you know, the story that he was in the military, any military serviceman had the chance to get out. Like if you knew somebody who knew somebody that you report to some rank, they'd say, hey,
Right.
these interpreters, they help us. Let's get them out. Right. So my father, if you remember some of the recent war in the U.S., the people in Afghanistan or something who were interpreters, the U.S. tried to get them out when the Taliban people come in. Similar in Vietnam, right? So they gave
Yeah.
some priorities. And I remember my father coming and I think talking to my mom, and it's like, hey, should we get out? Because, we have a ticket. We could go if we wanted to. And he made a very, I guess, hard decision to stay, because both of my grandmothers. Now, back in Vietnam, the men die very early, either to disease or war or whatever. So I never knew my grandfathers,
Uh-huh.
but my grandmothers, one of them lived in Saigon near us. That's my mom's mom. My dad's mom was down in the countryside near Vũng Tàu, about 100 kilometers away. Anyway, later on the story, I will tell you how that's related. But anyway, we didn't leave because my parents felt that my grandmothers were old and they didn't want to put them through that. So,
Yeah.
we decided to stay. They and their siblings, said we need to take care of our elderly. So we stay. Um, Later years in 1979, both of them had passed away.
Hmm.
And we, at the time, after 4 years under communism, it was just too much. We felt if we don't go now, they started drafting boys into the Vietnamese army.
And there was a war with Cambodia, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, yeah. So that's why I'm saying that even after the war, with the U.S. and everything else, the 1975 came. I mean, the war wasn't over. They sent some to the hard labor camps. They drafted the young men. And when I say young, it could be like 14, 15, whatever. You could be drafted to the army and you're sent to go fight Cambodia because the Viet Cong was always looking to like fight.
Yeah, yeah.
They were like, also, they fight for so long. And then when 95 camp, it's like, what are we going to do with these, whatever, hundreds and hundreds of thousands? So let's go fight Cambodian. Now, I'm not into politics. I never was, and I really care nothing about it. But the people that were drafted to the army, I knew even from school. People just like, you don't get a chance to go to. Let's say you're like a senior in high school, you will
Yeah.
not get a chance. You will just get into the army, and a lot of time. I knew actually one of my cousin. He was at that age, and he actually cut off his fingers, so he didn't have to go.
My gosh.
So it's you have to take dramatic step at that time. People are like, oh, you coward, but
Hmm.
whatever. It's survival. When you think about survival.
Yeah.
So later
Yeah.
on, I was talking to him. Yeah, I get reminded every day. He's like missing a trigger finger.
Right.
Immediately, you're like, no, right? So
Yeah.
that's when we were, starting to think we need to leave now because we didn't leave back in 1975.
Hmm.
And that my father, who was, kind of a educated man, he never went to college, but he was an interpreter. He had special schooling.
Yeah.
We became day laborers almost. So we were living
My
at the market
gosh.
front. He
Yeah.
was more during the military days. My mom was, comfortable. After the war, we basically had to like, okay, what do we do for a living? Because we can't, we're not the military. So we started selling
How
rice
harrowing.
or at the market. Before
Hmm.
that, we were more like running kind of an export import business because American business, American servicemen always have something to sell, right? They have their ration or their quota, cigarettes or alcohol, and they would, if my father would buy from them, and then he would resell because getting the Johnny Walkers and the smoke, Parman. I remember all the U.S. brand cigarettes and all of the. My house was stacked up tons of this thing. Whatever my father could get from them exchanging, he used that as a business, and so that's why we were able to live comfortably. But after the war, we couldn't do that anymore, right? So my
Hmm.
parents exchanged money for gold, hide that, and then we became kind of we were selling rice at the market.
Wow.
So I was at the time I was just a little boy, but it was quite a change in your daily life, right? So when my folks started, it's like okay, my parents said okay, we need to plan an escape. So
Yes.
you started
Yes.
planning to escape. It's not like you go buy a bus ticket or ferry ticket and you 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 have to be quiet, sneaky about it. So there was a lot of deceit.
Hmm.
Anytime when there's a mass exodus and it was an illegal activity, right? You have to be sneaking around trying to find people who are able to smuggle you out or whatever. So the term boat people, right? Um,
Yeah.
so I was the boat people part of the wave because you think about it in the refugee time. There are many people later on who came to like the U.S. or Western country. They were more like family reunion. They came through immigration sponsorship or whatever, right? But the first wave were the true refugee boat people because we there's almost I think the numbers are not exact but close estimate something like 750,000 people fled on
Jeez.
on on the sea because
Hmm.
oppression and whatever.
Hmm.
There was not an account for how many people actually lost at sea and died. They
Oh
estimate of a couple 100,000 people. So I was in that
my
wave,
gosh.
and
Mm-hmm.
in remembering how I got out, it was kind of a long, you have to be really kind of persistent because, as I say, you have to pay people to smuggle you. Somebody would come that work
Mm-hmm.
like this. They come and they say, hey, I'm arranging a boat and who wants to go? So let's say, okay, I have a family of 4 and then they will name a price like 10 gold bars, 10 ounces of gold per person, something like that. And this is where you take out your gold that you've been hiding and then you pay somebody and then they will have a plan to say, oh, okay, on that day, because we live in the city, we're not at the ocean, right? We live in the city, so you'd either have to make yourself down, either you have to go down to a river somewhere by the water, and then they will get you
Right.
onto the river and then somehow out to the sea. And so there are many different ways to get out, different cities by the water. So I recall, I guess my first attempt was kind of scary because you're always sneaking off. Let's say you say, I'm going to visit my grandmother, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we would be away for a couple of days or something like that. And back
Right.
then, if you escape, people wouldn't know. If you don't show up to your market like 2 days later, because I
Right.
forgot to mention, but after the war, they won't let you go anywhere without papers. So you can't go like literally, it's like checkpoint Charlie, checkpoint everywhere. You can't
Yeah.
just freely go about. You have to like have reason, whatever. So you say, okay, I'm gonna go visit my, grandma, blah 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 blah.
And
Anyway,
you had to have
so they
special
know
permission to go visit your grandma?
you have to have paper to go somewhere more than certain distance, and you could get stopped anytime, ask where you're going, why you're going, this and that, right? It's basically like that. So I remember my parents were like, okay, we're gonna just, you can't pack anything, you can't make it suspicious, so you just go. And you go. And then you're supposed to go somewhere and have some rendezvous, and then it didn't happen. Like they steal your money, they run off. There's a lot of fraud, a lot of conning. Anytime when there is a big need, there is a human greed in there.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to uh, my my aunt, some of my aunt and uncles in I think 78, as soon as one of my grandparents passed away, they started going. So the story is in 1975, the communists, they said that anybody who's non-Vietnamese, meaning like if you're Chinese, you could go by paying them. And it's called like registered, you know, no, let's call it self-deportation. Okay. Uh, yeah, Vietnam and Chinese people have been living among each other in Vietnam for a long time.
Right.
Sometimes, you hear history,
Yeah.
the Chinese try to conquer Vietnam for like 1,000 years. So there's inevitably there are like Chinatown. And I remember in Saigon there's a Chinatown. So there was
Yeah.
people who said, okay, after the war, you Chinese get out of here. You can freely leave. You pay, and we'll give you papers, and you can go to the boat and take your chance at sea. So basically, self-deportation. And so a lot of people left that way, including my aunt. I remember her husband passed away, so she said, "Oh, they were running like a machine shop, so they were quite well off before the war." So she arranged for her 3 or 4 boys and a couple girls to leave. And one of the foremen that worked for her was a Chinese man. And so they arranged fake paper that his entire family was Chinese, right? That's how you do it. You get fake
Right.
paper, you say, I'm Chinese, blah, blah, blah. You pay, you get out. And
Uh-huh.
that's how my aunt got out. My parents
That's
said
really
that at the
cool.
time, my aunt had offered us to get out the same way. Um, Unfortunately, my parents had already paid off somebody else to take us. So we didn't go that route.
Mm-hmm.
We went the sneaky route because we didn't know. We don't have any Chinese roots. We say, okay, we were gonna go escape. So my aunt got out on an official boat.
Right.
We were waiting for our chances, but that fell through because we got ripped off, right? So that didn't happen. For us, was like, oh man, that didn't go through. My aunt ended up in Singapore somewhere, and I think they were sponsored to Germany. So actually, I have family in Germany for the last, whatever,
Wow.
30, 40 years. And anyway, so
Mm-hmm.
so after that attempt, we were like, okay, looks like we missed that opportunity. And then we also lost a lot of gold in that attempt. So many times I remember after that, my parents would like try to find somebody who can trust, but you can't really trust anybody. So you have this catch-22. You got to get out. You got to find somebody,
Yeah.
but you can't trust them. But
Yeah.
if you don't trust anybody, then you can't go. So eventually you have to take a chance and you say, okay, I'm going to, maybe somebody here, somebody there, know somebody,
Yeah.
all this in secret, and you try that. So remember I told you we had the house in the
Yeah.
market. Yeah. Well, that house in the market became, something that we had to sell because we basically use up all the gold that we had to try and get out. And so many times we didn't make it. We got ripped off, whatever. So I remember one year, I only have my brother and I, the two siblings. My brother's older, and his age was, at the time, it's getting there. Maybe a couple more years, he will be drafted for the military.
Yeah.
So what my parents and I
How
escaped,
scary.
the way it worked, we don't want to put all the eggs in one basket. So we had split up. Normally, we split up 2 rendezvous.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the boat picked up 1 rendezvous where my brother was at and took all our gold and left my parents and I behind. So that one attempt, sometime in 1979, my brother got out, but not I, right?
Right.
And the whole thing was you do this at night and
Right.
you wait and nothing. Nobody come. It's
Nothing.
like let's say you pull down to this little village and you wait in the bushes by the ocean, the beach, and you wait
Yeah.
for the boat to come in to pick you up. They normally send a little patrol or something to pick you up and bring you out to the bigger boat. Who never
Mm-hmm.
came, and sunrise was about to come. So my parents and like this whole group we were in were like, man, we gotta get it back. We gotta go back. If we don't make it back before like the market open, they know we try to escape, and they would just immediately go confiscate your house. When you come back, you get thrown in jail. So lots of people who you come back and then next thing you know, you lose everything and then you get thrown in jail. So I remember like we were just in a frantic panic because we waited and waited and waited, right? We said, what if they were
Mm-hmm.
late picking us up? By
Right.
the time that, almost before sunrise, saying, hey, we cannot wait anymore. We didn't know what happened. We don't even know. They picked up the other rendezvous. We went back. We rushed back. And I didn't see my
Mm-hmm.
brother.
Right.
So we didn't know what happened. So all we can assume is either they got caught, thrown in jail, or
Mm-hmm.
they were
Yeah.
actually picked up and gone. And so for 7 days or something like that, about 7 or 10 days, we didn't know anything now. What happened? One day we
How
got,
desperate.
one day
What
we
a
got,
desperate situation.
yeah. So I mean, I don't know what's going on, but we had our own problem. We had to rush back and make sure we are all kind of safe, and everything was normal. But then there's like people wonder, hey, where's your brother? Sometime later, we got a telegram from Singapore. So my brother actually made it uh, some way out in the ocean. We had only, I think, though they picked up rendezvous. They only had he and a few of my cousins were in that boat in that part. So a few of cousins, and so they ended up picked up by a Japanese fishing boat. And Japanese fishing boat were like always fishing, and they picked it up. And then by at the time it was default, like they picked you up, they put you into a refugee camp or United Nation run a refugee camp in Singapore is one of the location. And I think after a month, he wasn't, because my parents are still in Vietnam with me, right? So basically, he's a minor. Some of our
Yeah.
cousin was slightly older, but there's not that much older.
Yeah.
One of my aunt on my mom's side also got 2 of the girls out like a year before that, and they
Right.
had somehow also went to, I think, either Indonesia or Malaysia or Singapore. I don't remember exactly, but they were sponsored to Australia. So when my
To Australia.
brother got to Singapore, after a month, nobody had sponsored him. They all defaulted to Japan because they were picked up by
Mm-hmm.
Japanese fishing boat.
Right.
So he went to Japan. So they settled in Japan. So
Hmm.
anyway, when we got the telegram that we're in Singapore, like, oh, thank God, right? He didn't die. Because, it's very normal to get bad news and, no news at all. So you assume they're lost at sea. Um, but after we got that news, we're like, oh, great. Well, at least one got out.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But I'm
Uh,
sure your parents must have been desperate, wondering where your brother was.
yeah. And I remember after that, and my brother and I were very close, just like boys hanging out in our early age and, going fishing together, doing all kinds of stuff together. And now he's gone. So I'm by myself. And, so my parents were wondering, like, okay, let's try again because we have to, because now we got one out. Like, we can't stay here, right?
Yeah.
So we even got more determined to get out because the later you wait, the harder it gets because they're cracking down. And I remember having to change school all the time because every time we escape, we come back. They know you try and they give you a hard time. They give you a hard time at school and everything. So every time I came back, my parents would change school and I'd be in a different school. So I'd be like a few months in this school, then I go a few months in that school. So I couldn't
Yeah.
I couldn't get along with any. I don't have any friends, and just like imagine you growing up, it's
No.
like you can't make any friends. You can't really talk to anybody about this, right? um, so I remember they try really hard to find some way to get out. So for some quite a few, I think no less than probably a dozen or 10 attempts before I was able to get out. Obviously, I'm here, so I must have got out somehow. Right? But many times I remember running through thorny bushes, sneaking through, some dark places to try and get to some rendezvous points that didn't happen and have to run back. There were times where one of my cousin was riding a bike and I'm on the bike and I'm sitting at the back and she gave me the gold bars to like, we got separated and, running for your life and stuff. I just remember being a little kid and being scared. Like, why are we doing all this, sneaking around and, running around and escaping? After a while, I understood. After a while, when I'm told that, oh,
Yeah.
we're going to that place and staying a few days, like you think it's like summer, people have a summer vacation. You go to some place. Well, I knew what it meant. It meant like you're going down to this hiding place. You hide there for a few days. Then you wait for the right time, place or whatever. People will come and, tell you where to go and you go. And then if people don't come, nothing happened, then you go back. So many times that happened. But eventually, when I say eventually, after so many times, we went from our house at the market down to a little hut somewhere out in the, far, far away. We're not at the market anymore. And I remember my father, basically, eventually we couldn't trust anybody.
Right.
My family, I think my aunt on my mom's side said, hey, we can't trust anyone anymore. They're the one that had the two girls that left early. They said, okay, the only way we're going to get out now is we would have to build our own boat, get our own crew, right? And we have to trust ourselves. We can't trust anybody else. And that was the attempt that we made and planned for I think at least 9 months, because I remember my father having to leave Saigon and go back to his town on the countryside at where he
Right.
grew up. Was about 100 kilometers away. And he basically became a fisherman. He went back to, kind of fishing village in the countryside. And I had an uncle there. He stayed there. And so there was only my mom and I left in Saigon. And at the time, my mom was still selling rice to, get by. We had moved down to this little, tiny hut house that doesn't have like running water, no electricity. Showering is like, you get the rainwater in the big, they used to have these, whatever, 100-gallon container used to use for gasoline. You use that to catch water and you would, shower out of there. Anyway, so it was quite contrast
Wow.
change from, my life in the city by the marketplace down to this little hut. So during the day, I remember going to school, and then I have to go to the market to help my mom with delivering rice. People buy rice. So I was a little kid riding a big adult bike with a stack of rice on my bike, riding to deliver. And the market people would recognize, oh, there goes Lin, the guy. So you do what you need to do to survive. But at the time, we knew that we had to keep trying. And then my father, who was at the time went back to his hometown in the countryside. He did become a fisherman. He became from
Really?
educated translator, doing all these things, became back to like just going fishing because we had to build a longer term plan to escape using our own boat. So
Right.
between 1979, 81, October 1981 was when we finally got all the family that we wanted to go. My aunt had put down money. My parents put everything they had in there. This is the last dash. After this, no more.
What an
By the grace of
adventure.
God. And I was like, the last time that we left, instead of staying at some random stranger's home for a few days, I stayed at my grandma's place where my dad was. And we actually, like
Yeah.
you're going to visit the family, and you stay there. So it was much more familiar, but you still have this scary mood. But like this is the last chance you get. If you don't succeed now, that's it. Right? There's no more money. Uh, but after so many, it's hard to hold on to hope. But you have to have hope. That's the hardest thing, is to have hope when times are very dark, and you don't know where you're gonna go, where you end up. Because
Yeah.
by now you hear all the stories. People at sea, a lot of people, sometimes they die because they just, whatever, rough sea. But there was a lot of bad things in the ocean because
Yeah.
the Thai fishermen, they took advantage. They became pirates because when Vietnamese people get out by boat, you can go only a few directions that end up in a free country. You can end up in like Hong Kong. You can go to
Right.
Malaysia, Indonesia, land. Right? If you drift up north and you end up in China, you're screwed because like communist, right? Or you don't know where you go and you end up in another part of Vietnam. Time we left, Thai pirates were very, very bad because they were fishermen, in the water there, and they took advantage of the Vietnamese boat people. And there were a lot of stories of, kind of just burning down boats, stealing kids, killing, raping women. All that story is all true. Because why I know it's true?
Oh
Because
my
when we
gosh.
escaped, we finally got out. We escaped, right? One night in October 1981, I was hiding in the boat when we got down from the house. So what happened is, in a fishing boat, you have these like ice storage containers underneath the boat in the hull. When you fishermen, right, they pull up the fish, they put it in the hull, right? So that's where you hide people. So we hide there, and then the
Right.
boat in the morning would, at night they're gonna go out to fish because normally I always fish at night. So you go out at night, and then whatever you catch early morning, you come back. And so my family, myself, my mom, etc., we got into the boat, and then the boat got out, and I could hear up there, like my dad is up there, right? Because he's one of the fishermen. And I could hear, talking to even patrols, because you have to show paper and inspect when you get out. Oh, okay, but because he's been doing this for months, right? For
Hmm.
roughly about a year, it was familiar. And, I don't know for a fact or not whether they bribed somebody, but that night we got out just like normally when they go on a fishing trip. Because I remember going one time, he said, okay, let's have you come down, and we'll go fishing so that you are familiar what it looks like, and etc. So I had remember from a previous trip that I went out with my dad, and we went out fishing for that day and came back. So I said, okay, so I kind of know this now. So when we escaped, wasn't too shocked, except was hiding under the boat. But when we got out in the morning, normally the boats turn around and come back. Well, we didn't turn around, right? We're free. but we're still in the Vietnamese water. We just got to the point where you either turn around, come back. If you don't turn around, you keep going. And if you keep going and you see patrol boats, they know you're escaping and they're gonna basically hunt you down, chase you down, right? I remember
My gosh.
when the boat started getting out there and I hear conversation up and then I hear engines start revving because they said, hey, we passed the water and apparently there was a patrol boat that chased us. Now,
Right.
back then when you escape, you don't just escape. You have to plan food, water,
Right.
right? You don't know how long you're going to spend at sea. You don't know where you're going to end up. So you can say,
Yeah.
and a tiny fish boat, my boat, the boat that we had was, I remember 13 meters long. So that's about 40 feet, 40 something feet.
Yeah.
We had 52 people and all
Oh my
cram in
gosh.
the,
All fitting on
well,
that boat?
so you remember these boats, like, yeah, so we were crammed inside those storage container, whatever it is, because the crew can only be like a few. A crew might be like 5 people, right? The rest was hiding.
Yeah.
So we're hiding underneath. Now, imagine this. You're in a boat and you're hiding inside this hole and the boat's rocking and you smell diesel, gasoline. Everybody's throwing up like crazy. Like, oh, you get seasick. You have no sense of, you get motion sickness really bad underneath the hull. And I was in a bad state. Like I was just dying to get out to get some fresh air. But I remember my dad was like, oh, I think we across this line where there's kind of no return line. And then somebody spotted a patrol boat behind us, chasing us. So this is a Vietnamese patrol boat.
Right.
So my 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 cousin, long distance cousin, was actually, because we remember we can't trust anybody, so he's own the family. So the pilot
Right.
for our boat is one of my cousins, and he's been a fisherman all his life. Amazing thing is he
Mhm.
actually didn't want to leave, but my aunt said like you have to because you're like the best pilot, and he navigates by the star. Can you imagine? Like for the years
Wow.
he knows where stuff is, which direction to go, and you know,
Right. From
so
all
he
the
basically.
constellations.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, so he's one of those best ones, right? Anyway, at the time when we were leaving, and my father's like, oh, is that a patrol boat? And they go, yeah, it's a patrol boat. So you know what? We had to carry guns on the boat, not only water, food, fuel, but you need some way of defense because we know we have to defend against the patrol boats. We also have to defend against Thai pirates. So our first encounter
Right.
was with patrol boats. So my cousin like floor the engine. I know because normally when you are fishing, you just go very slow. You can hear the stroke motor, and then all of a sudden it goes
Right.
like full on, like full speed. Never, what's
My
going on?
gosh.
So we were chased by patrol boat. But what
Right.
happened was my father, because he was kind of military, he was able to purchase some guns. So we had like I think something that was like an
Right.
M16 and a 45, something
Mhm.
like that. They have a couple guns. So as soon as we took guns out and pointed at the patrol boat, those guys don't want to deal with it because they only want to catch you if you are like you're not gonna fight back. You don't have any way to fight back. They'll catch you. But as soon as they see guns pointed at you, they say, "Ah, screw it." So actually, they abandon the chase. So we cleared that hurdle the first morning. And we're like, "Oh, finally!" But remember, after years and many tries, we never actually even made it to the boat, right? So
Yeah.
getting on the boat, getting out to sea into the open sea, and clearing the first hurdle of just making across that water line. We felt like, oh, this is such a major achievement. So that was my first sense that we're finally breaking free of this prison, if you think about it that way. And the taste of freedom, you can smell it, right? You can smell it. And
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
intoxicating, it's addictive. But after years and tries and all the hardship, you're doing this not just because it's a nice to have, it's like something that is part of the core of a human being that you have to fight for freedom, right?
Totally.
especially if you witness, some hardship and atrocity where people that you knew, came back like horribly, damaged. Um, so my early sense that we were starting to make somewhere was on that boat on the first day at sea.
Yeah.
And the journey is very long, but if you never start, that's the whole point. When I think back, right, you can think about a journey and it's so long and arduous, you just get put off without starting. But if you don't start, you will never go anywhere. Was it the line that, yes,
Exactly.
journey 1,000 miles starts with the first single step, right? And that first step is the hardest step. And the thing with the whole escape is you have to plan it, right? You have to fight for it. Nothing comes easy. You have to make that step. You have to take that risk. You really want something that important. It's like core foundation to who you are. You fight for it. And it was what really started this fire inside of me. Like, hey, you know, you struggle, but you know the direction you want to go, and you have to set foot, and you have to work. Even as a kid, I knew very early that these are the trials, right? These are the things that make a difference. So in life, sometimes you have to make a decision that would change the rest of your life. My parents made the decision to leave. Once my brother was able to leave, we had to leave. And that was the point where everything started rolling. And once you start rolling, you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other and plan that way. So that was the beginning of the journey. So I have a lot more to tell. Obviously, that was the first day out at sea, but we can continue that story.
Yeah, I'd love to continue hearing this story about you and your journey. And I think, you know, the next time we talk, we can also talk about connecting this sort of character building experience and the lessons that you just mentioned to me and how that applies to business. Although that sounds very trite, I think,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
fundamentally,
that's
business
you.
and
You
the
you know that I
experience
I
you went
don't
through.
I don't give up easily. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the overcoming challenge is just everyday life. I take it very seriously about not giving up on first try or second try or third try. If you have to go 10 times, that's one thing that stuck in my mind. Is if you have to do it 10 times and this is the right thing to do, you keep doing it until you get it right. It takes everything that you have, all the energy you have. So that stay with me and to today. It's like I don't expect anything to be easy. And I always remember this line that nothing worthwhile, right, is easy. So if it's worth doing, don't expect to be easy. Very few things in life are, right. And so that's always been my thing. Like, just all the trials and tribulations and uh, those difficult days are forging something in you, right? Strengthen you to learn from experience and to use that to improve. Of course, you don't do 10 things 10 times the same way. You tweak it. Like we try to escape. We don't go like the same way every time. We don't go back to the same guy. We try different things, different route. This didn't work. Try something else. But always be thinking about moving forward that way and persisting. And again, hope is a crazy thing. A glimmer of hope is a lot more powerful than you think, right? You have hope in something, you would work, you would try to build it, and yeah. So that I think that's one of
Absolutely.
my things that
I
I
mean,
count on a lot is that you got to give that hope. If you have that hope in that, you don't give up. You got to work hard at it, and you got to believe
yeah.
in it. Because if you don't believe you
What a
can do
harrowing
it, then
story, but what an inspirational story too, because you and your family just you didn't give up because you had that hope of freedom. And so
mhm.
thank you so much for sharing your story, Lynn. And we'll talk about this in the next episode. We'll continue the story.
Yeah. Well, we'll do many different stories, but this is one of them.
Yeah,
Thanks.
exactly. Well, we'll see everybody next time in the next episode where Lynn is going to share more about what shaped him as a person and as an entrepreneur. We'll see you next time.